My guests are seated. Let's get ready to deal with the issues that we have tabled for discussion this morning. And you're aware already that the Delta 13 have gone to court. A new charge was placed before the court. The old charges, the charges of assault, charges of causing damage to property, were found by the Attorney General not to be charges that they could sustain in court. And a lot of questions are being raised about that because people say, we have seen a video. How much have you seen in that video? And say that from what they saw in that video, if the Attorney General had pursued the matter upon the old charges, it would have gotten better justice for the man who was assaulted and also to serve the deterrence that is required to be engendered by the enforcement of criminal sanctions. So, what did the Attorney General do wrong? And they pleaded guilty to the new charge of rioting, and then got fined 1,800 each. In total, they are paying 23,400, and then to sign a bond to be of good behavior. People are raising a lot of issues about that. Why? Did the court do something wrong? We are finding out about that first, and then tied to that, we'll look at the CID boss, who was Brighton Row, who was asked to go home and enjoy his vacation, which had been pending his retirement. He doesn't like that. And I asked the question, why should that be a matter for national debate? And whether or not it is justified, the criticism, including those coming from some civil society, that the appointment of ACP Ado Dankwa to replace him is justified. And then, of course, you know that we have a 510 million Ameri deal that is being sought to be rescinded by Parliament. What exactly has been going on? It's taking the government too long, in the opinion of many people. You set up a committee, the Addison committee, it found out that things were wrong. What is it that is holding you back from doing what you feel is right? And then we got PricewaterhouseCoopers, is it, to also do some value for money audit, an additional one. That is also done, isn't it? And still, we are in Parliament fighting the minority, boycotting a process. And yesterday, you may have heard what Komna Donko had to say to the committee. People are shocked some of the things that he had to say about his apparent lack of knowledge of what exactly was involved in some detail. And then we get down to ask a question about the NCA. As it cracks the whip, there are people who are complaining, and the question is, why are you complaining? We are the same people who are saying that if the NPA and others had, enforced the law strictly, we would not have had the disasters that we are having as far as gas explosions are concerned. Well, you must have heard Esla, who is the Minister of Communication in Parliament yesterday. It does appear that she's bent on what she's doing, and she has no apologies, even though they have issued some sort of reprieve, giving the fines that they had imposed 50%, as it were, rebate on them. Is that also encouraging wrong to continue happening? So these are the issues that we're looking at this morning. And like I said, my guests are seated, and my guests this morning are our regular panelists and editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Crusading Guide newspaper, Kweku Bako, Abdul Malik. Kofi Bento is a lawyer, and Vice President Imani Africa. The Honorable Yunusa Hussaini is MP. He's a lawyer and MP for Tamale Central. He's ranking member, Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee. He should join us shortly. But in the studio, representing the New Patriotic Party, as in the government now, is also a lawyer and Member of Parliament for 2nd D, Andrew Ejapa Mesa. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the studios. Great. Okay, so first of all, we want to see how we can quickly just deal over this matter and move on to some other matters that may appear to be more substantive as far as the national discourse is concerned about the matters that have come up in the course of the week. But some say what happened in the Delta 13 case is a matter of selective justice. Particularly the opposition feels that it's not too long ago when some people were thought to have misbehaved. And we saw how the Supreme Court came on them, handing them jail terms, including fines. Why is it that in this case, only fines and meager fines in their estimation are being imposed, and that this is not going to deter crime? It will rather continue to reinforce the idea that as far as you belong to a political party, you have the license to misbehave. Kofi?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Good morning. And usually when the politicians come, they send greetings to their constituents. Those of us who don't have politicians, we still have constituents.
You do?
Mine is in my house. So,
yeah.
I just want to say happy birthday to my big baby. She turned another year. And I want to say I'm very proud of you, Nanajwa. Happy birthday. Right, so on this one, my take is about how we process cases. Why? Because, you know, this thing hit me during the stadium disaster, the May 9 disaster. And I remember in discussion with some lawyers around that time, you know, we were interested in people being arrested, people being brought to justice. So many people had died. The police had, you know, misbehaved or misconducted themselves and caused all this harm. And after a bit of, you know, give and take, some people were arrested. We were all happy. They were put before court. We were all happy. And then they were charged. We were all happy. And we were expecting sentences to come out. In that discussion, before the sentences came out, the lawyers were like, nobody's going to be found guilty. And I was like, why? How? It's because of the way the case was processed and the charges that were proffered against them. Because in a criminal trial, in some of these trials, the standard of proof is important. So the person, you can see somebody shoot somebody, but depending on how that case is processed, even collecting evidence, and the charges and other things, they may work, regardless of what you saw. Now, I remember the same thing when this was going on. I am saying this because, look, in other places, what happens is that whether it's a political party or a think tank or a civil society organization, they are careful to be vocal about how the whole process is managed so that you don't get an outcome which is not satisfactory to the general populace. We all saw people attack a court, and they come out and they get a very meager fine. What's the message? But you and I know it's the nature of the charge, is the way things were processed and how things went in court. So for me, on that technicality, I don't see a problem with this. Okay, but the message is sent, okay, the way it looks, the optics of it, the perception of it, looks like these are political operatives and they've been let off lightly. So here's my take.
That they are political operatives is beyond question.
Very well. And so there's another dimension to that. It means political operatives are subject to a different kind of law. Because if you and I attack the court, look, even if they were charged with assault, and assault is just putting somebody in an apprehension, even if they were charged with assault and a number of other things which are possible under this, okay, it could have been different. So the optics, the perception, and everything, the message is sent, it's bad. But as far as the technicality of the law is concerned, the judge would have made the judgment based on the facts in front of him, based on the charges that were put in front of him. And even when it comes to sentencing, people don't realize it. Judges don't have open-ended discretion. There are sentencing rules. There is a maximum sentence, there's a minimum sentence. And so, technically, I really don't see a problem with this. But I want to say that we all should be minded to be part of the discourse, the discussion, when these things happen, from the point of even arrest, how the case is processed, the charges that are, you know, brought up against these people and follow the process through, because sometimes the end of the law, as in what the law puts out, can be very different from justice. That's my comment on this one.
Right. You know that the Delta 13 comes out of the invisible forces matter, in which also there was a video displayed of the man who had been appointed, so to speak, to go and take charge of the job of a security, coordination for the region, so to speak. And people said, well, the AG took a decision. And that decision, initially we were told from government that the decision was taken by the attorney in the region without recourse to the center. And that, certain things were going to be looked at and so on. You had Martin Amidu and others right to say, you're wrong. The person had the power. The law empowers the person of that status to be able to take that decision. And so they took the decision and said, look, we are withdrawing. Then the other part of those who have disturbed the courts also ends up in a situation where people feel there has not been punitive enough for them. Do you think that it disturbs the psyche of criminal justice in the country, that it encourages impunity, as some suggest?
Absolutely. And really, on all these matters, that is where the problem is. Again, you see the processing of the case. And, people watch these things and they make up their minds about what is happening. Right or wrong, they also react to it. Okay. Now, it is not a license for anybody to go on rampage and commit other crimes and whatever it is. But it clearly is disturbing. Because you know that ordinarily speaking, if anybody did such a thing, this is not the treatment they will get. So it is clear that depending on what cloak you are wearing, especially if it's political, you get a different kind of justice. That message is never good. It is never good. And again, you speak about the processes that I was talking about. Look, somebody makes a decision, the AG at the place makes a decision and says that, okay, we withdraw, we are not going to go ahead. It is within their power to make that decision. But who would convince me that that person did not come under some political pressure? We need to move to a place where hopefully our officials will make decisions independently. It's the same kind of argument or discussion that has led us to this Office of the Special Prosecutor thing. There is overbearing political influence on our public officials in the exercise of their duties. And in the process, clearly, at least to the minds of ordinary people, do not make competent decisions. And to the extent that it doesn't have any other collateral effect, that is fine. But if you have a situation like this where it sends a message that you have two separate justice systems in this country, it is really, really, really very, very, very dangerous, very difficult for us to digest. And look, the populace is going to be maybe resigned to this, but watch it. It will continue to come up. This will continue to be described as a political trial. We will continue to hear ugly noises about it, even though we've disposed of it legally. I hope that in future we will deal with these matters, and when they are dealt with, end of story. Look, elsewhere in the US where they have their Honorable Trump, a judge just stopped his executive order. A small judge in a small city stopped his executive order. That's the whole president of the country. And it's routinely going on, okay, where the rule of law is no respecter of persons, and even when the president has vehemently decided that he's going to proceed on the second part, he is stopped. I pray for the day when we get to the point where our public officials, even though they are working, in the case of the judiciary, they're not even working at the pleasure of the justice, the president, they will be able to make decisions which are competent and with regardless of who is in power or what pressure they are coming under.
Right. If the Attorney General had continued to prosecute them under the charges of assault and unlawful damage, you would expect that the charges of assault would not have gone beyond the misdemeanor that it would have been. You would expect that the charge of unlawful damage may also not have gone beyond the misdemeanor that it may have been. Because by the dictate of the law, depending on the damage involved, if the value of what has been damaged does not exceed 1 million cedis, or that there is, as the law says, there is no pecuniary value, then it is a misdemeanor. Then when the value exceeds 1 million, then it becomes a second-degree felony, which you would then expect that at minimum, maybe 10 years in jail. That is if custodial sentence will be passed. And then even move further, if it is damage that is intentional and unlawful, involves the use of weapons and causes so much as to also cause the loss of life, then it will move to first degree. This is not what happened. So on the first two counts that were replaced, they were most likely going to remain misdemeanors. And if they had gone to the court and pleaded guilty to those, maybe they would have gotten same fines. When it comes to rioting, also the same issue of a misdemeanor. Unless, you know, weapons are involved, then it becomes, you know, a second-degree felony, where you expect that the punishment will be a lot higher. So, look at both ways. They may have ended up with a fine. So, is there justification in what we seek to project that they have been dealt with leniently?
What you've just done is a good thing, is to explain to people that there is a certain limit to the options that the AG has.
Right.
But you've also said something that...
Even the judge?
Yes, even the judge. First, with the AG who is going to put up the charges.
Right.
Then the judge in terms of the charges that have been brought, you know, and then the evidence that will be gathered, and then the decisions they will make, and the sentence they will give. These are all properly written out. But you've also given people a certain idea that for any act, the AG or the police have a series of tools, a number of things that they can use. And in certain situations, they can combine certain things and escalate.
Right.
Now, these are the things, I almost said tricks, but they are not tricks. But these are the things that you use. Okay, so for instance, the point where you said, if you assaulted with a weapon, it changes the nature of the crime. Look, if any of those guys was holding a stick, that would have been a weapon. Okay, this is where now you come in and you say, what is the magnitude of the offense? For me, Samson, attacking a courtroom, attacking a judge, going to free somebody who is under lawful custody, for me undermines our whole democracy. So if I were the one in charge, I would look for every opportunity. If you were holding a pencil, I'll call it a weapon.
This is a rude intervention. In terms of precision, this Delta 13, were those that were involved in the court invasion?
No, that's the Delta 8.
So the two is
the Delta 8 and 13. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
it's a useful intervention.
I get the same problem all the time. But
Okay. Okay.
13
Yes.
were the ones
Yes.
who attacked the
Yes.
national security.
It's
That's
a
great,
useful
great,
intervention.
great.
But the big picture still remains.
Sure.
Okay, that where you have this kind of action, people attacking a court, or what happened in Kumasi where they attacked the national security coordinator, the Ashanti region. You know, you are attacking institutions of state with serious impunity. And the point back to it is this: something is explaining how you can use different things, and even if it was something that could be made into a misdemeanor, you can escalate it to something more serious, just to send the message that nobody should do this ever. But in this case, they opted for the lower, you know, options, and so we ended up with simple fines. I'm explaining that on the technicality, nothing wrong has been done. But in terms of the optics and the perception and the message it sends, it is extremely grievous. People may not understand, but I think you should listen well to what Samson said. There is a plethora of things that the police and the AG can use in dealing with cases like this. In this case, they chose the lesser options. So, all well and good, matter disposed of. But because of the nature of this matter, I assure you, it will not leave our political discourse. People will continue to say it was a political trial, even though technically everything was done properly.
Okay. Yes, Andrew.
Well, since I'm a politician, I guess it's important that I send greetings to my constituents in Second D, and of course to all your cherished viewers and my co-panelists on the program. I disagree with Kofi in part, of course. I mean, when this Delta Force incident happened, all well-meaning Ghanaians, including those within the government party, condemned their actions roundly. So I'm not here to, as it were, hold brief for them or seek to justify their actions or whatsoever in any way. My only difficulty is the suggestion that the Attorney General chose lesser options that were available to her to, as it were, proffer the charges against these individuals. I think that, of course, she's only limited to the extent of the evidence and the charges that are available in the Criminal Offences Act. She could not have charged them with murder because that option was not available to her. She charged them with conspiracy to attack a public officer, which necessarily required that she proves that these people acted together to commit the offense. Of course, subsequently, when she evaluated the evidence before her, she realized that it was not possible for her to prove that they had acted together in the commission of the offense against the public officer. So she was practically left with no choice. And the second charge that was leveled against them, I believe, was damage to property. And you've indicated clearly that the quantums that were involved were not.
Say welcome to News of State.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
That would have warranted any other charge than the one that was proffered against the individuals. Subsequently, those charges were withdrawn. Nobody can deny that what the persons involved at the Regional Coordinating Council in Kumasi amounted to riotous behavior. So in the circumstances, that was the offense that she could easily, and within the confines of the burden and standard of proof that we all know our criminal jurisprudence demands.
Does the fact that they pleaded guilty to that offense suggest to you that the former charges could have been maintained?
I don't think so. Of course, I mean
that they pleaded guilty. That they pleaded guilty is to say yes, were the people involved.
Of course, and that they had committed some riotous act for which they could not deny, and so the judge proceeded to convict them and apply the punishment as defined by law. Look, I mean, we are want to put political colors to most of these things that did not begin today. And I'm not interested in political equalization that during your time you did A, B, C, D, E. But you cannot in any way equate this action that these persons committed to Muntie 3 in any way. I mean, you know, spills completely into insignificance. But then again, it's an offense nonetheless.
You see what informs the perception that gives some amount of, you know, significance to the other side of the argument is that look at how it all began. They were charged, and then the Delta 8 went in and sought to procure their escape illegally. How did they procure their escape? The story is one that you don't want to tell about what goes on about the judiciary, what wrong is done to the judiciary of this country. Some will say, how is that completely different from what the Muntie 3 were accused of? Well, and in fact, some say that is even higher, because in respect of the Delta 8, they stormed a courtroom and forcibly got their people out of the courtroom.
You see, Samson.
And the Attorney General took the view that it could not maintain the charge against them. So it was withdrawn. They were left to go.
And I'll repeat, I'm not holding brief for the perpetrators of these offenses because I have roundly condemned the actions of both Delta 8 and Delta 13. Relative to Delta 13, clearly, it doesn't come anywhere close to Muntie. We can have a conversation on Delta 8 who attacked the court and sought to free their members who, contrary to their expectation, were remanded as opposed to being granted bail, because that's what incited them to attack the court, because they were of the view that the offenses that they had committed, the Delta 13 had committed, was not one that required some...
Was non-bailable.
Yes, it was not a non-bailable offense for which they were
refused the bail.
Absolutely. So then that generated some, if you like, reaction.
And the main point of why the state was unable to proceed was that you could not identify them.
Absolutely. So in that conversation, we can discuss as to whether the advice from the attorney in Kumasi to the police to withdraw the charges that had been proffered against them was legitimate or otherwise. But in terms of Muntie, Delta 13, I think that clearly the rule of law has prevailed. They have been duly charged, prosecuted. They have pleaded guilty to the offenses as charged. And the court has applied the sanctions as defined by law. Of course, if you commit misdemeanors, no, I don't think it's lenient at all, because, like you rightly said, these are misdemeanors. They are not second-degree felonies, or even, they are not felonies for that matter.
People get jailed for committing misdemeanors.
Yeah, people get jailed.
There's a maximum of 3 years that you can get.
Yes, I agree, but the fine as well, or in default, a jail term, is also available to the judge who exercises reasonable discretion in these matters to proffer the punishment. So I think that it's a clear lesson that has been sent out there, that regardless of your political colorization, if you commit an offense against the state, some punishment would follow. And in this case, that is exactly what has happened.
All right. Kweku, do you see that the claims that this is a promotion of impunity if you belong to a political party are founded?
It's a very tricky question. A very tricky one. We've had a history of acts of violence, vandalism, and assault. People closing down public facilities, seizing them, all those, mainly political actors being involved, foot soldiers and activists of the political parties, particularly the NPP and the NDC. We've had a long history. There's a catalogue of such acts over the years. We even had a situation where you had, you remember them, I don't know if they still exist, the Association of Defense of the Revolution, the ACDRs, doing a counter demonstration.
Yes.
And in the process, alongside some security personnel that were based at the castle, shooting into the demonstrators and killing human beings, 4 people dead. We've had a long history, people invading the residency in Wa, burning, if you recall, the tender documents, violence, artillery, and the rest. Across the divide, both sides had perpetrated these acts, and there weren't any serious investigations or action in terms of criminal prosecution. And we've all been worried about that, because it's brought about a culture of impunity, that once it's been done under a political cover, then you are at no risk. So this is a phenomenon that I think has worried all of us. And so when this one happened, I think most of us criticized it, condemned it, you know, especially when you had some political elements trying to rationalize, justify, or, you know, cover it up. So within this context, you might think that, oh, at least, and I'm not sure it is the first, you have to be careful, that at least one or two instances we've been able to prosecute and, you know, convict some people who have done, because it's still a conviction. I mean, you are the lawyers, so you can say the sentence is what we are looking at now. You know, it's a record, but the sentence, it said what?
It's lenient.
Yes, people are saying so.
People were looking, the critics were looking for custodial sentence.
I would have wished if it was. After all, it said a fine or 12 months. Yeah, in default, 12 months. I would have wished the judge just gave them a custodial sentence, just because I'm one of those who is pushing for us to build a culture of deterrence. Okay, I'm for that. I know I'm not talking law here, because the judge can defend the judgment. You've just given us some education, at least for me, that it's legally defensible within the status. The judge stands on a firm ground. I agree. But you see, I'm looking at the bigger picture, the effect that these things have had on our politics and may have continued to have. And one day we may go have a more serious situation. So I would have gone for custodial sentence, 12 months. I would have gone for that and take the fine out. Now, before I proceed any further, the charge, those 13 people, they were actually 20-something.
Right.
Where are the 8? They still at large. That's what the police are telling us. If you look at the original charge sheet, they are 21 or so. Okay? Where are the 8? So they are free. This is the end of the case. I said they should search, locate, and apprehend them for possible prosecution. Now, the original charge, to I realize, was assault of a public officer,
right,
causing unlawful damage, and routing. So it means that they removed the assault of the public officer.
And causing damage.
And causing damage. They removed those two and left the routing. I don't know. Was the regional coordinator, and that itself was a misnomer. There's nothing like that. The law doesn't know anything like that.
Right.
But was he not assaulted? Was he not manhandled?
Yeah, we have played that video here a number of times. May not be needful, but if the production is listening, you can play it back in due course while the discussion is going on for our viewers to see again. As for the question of assault, clearly you saw him being dragged from his office upstairs.
Yes.
And then he fell on the stairs. He fell in a way that, when we were discussing it here earlier, I said was quite disturbing, because you can't imagine seeing your dad or somebody like that being pulled through such a situation.
Yes. So why was that removed from the charge sheet? Why wasn't it left there? If they pleaded not guilty to that, let the court decide. Why not? I don't know. You are the lawyers.
You will
Incidentally, we are four
him. You may need him for the successful prosecution. And if he's a member of the party, you definitely won't have him come testify
you
against
may need
the party.
I've forgotten the name.
Yes.
Is it Mr. B or something? That he wouldn't show up?
Yes, he will not cooperate to want to be a witness.
Is that what happened? We don't know. You are speculating.
Yes, it's possible.
Highly possible. It's true that you need the person to cooperate as a witness, but it's possible to get a successful conviction without that person cooperating. This is the security capo's office. Were there no cameras? Didn't they have footage of the event?
The footage we already have.
We do.
Exactly. So my point is, I get what something is saying, and we are straddling between legal technicality, okay, and optics and political perception. So what Kweku is trying to say is that they've opted for the easy route out. And indeed, something is right to say, maybe the man wouldn't have come to help. But is it not possible? The others who they said run away, you can't find them. I always say the Ghana police found somebody who had been killed in a bush and hidden under concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a point here that we are all making. And Kweku, I'm happy you are making the point and saying you are not the lawyer, because this is what every Ghanaian is seeing. All right? Was it not possible? And the routing one, why did they take it away? You can escalate route to, a second-degree felony. So please,
they left
the
routing.
Yes, they left
that.
They left that. So please continue.
I am unconvinced.
No, but we need to clear this. You say you can escalate routing to second degree, but
If
that
there's
is
a weapon.
when you have used offensive weapons.
Yes. And so if
The video you saw, did you see them holding any weapons?
I didn't see them holding it, but I'm saying you can't do that. And I'm saying if I am the agent, I wanted to send a message. If even one of them was holding a pencil, because you want to send a message, I will call the pencil an offensive weapon and proceed in that direction.
Okay.
We are making that general point.
I have a real difficulty, to be honest with you. And this is because I vote on the side of those who want severe punishment for this kind of political, vandalism, which cuts across the political divide, to be honest with you, and many have escaped punishment. That's not good enough. I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm hugely challenged in making my submission. But the truth of the matter is that they should have left the assault. On lawful damage, there were a few broken glasses here and there. I think there were some glasses that were broken.
Yeah.
Yes. I think they should have left it that way and let the court go through the process. If they said they were not guilty, there could still be evidence to the effect, as Kofi is saying, to build a case.
Yeah, but I asked the question. You say they could have left the unlawful damage as well because there's evidence of property that was damaged. But the question is that if you left that and if you left the assault, and all of the two are not elevated beyond misdemeanor, just like the rioting, in the end, the conviction and sentencing would have also perhaps gone to a fine.
It will be a preferred path to dispensing justice and to winning public opinion on your side. Public knowing that there has been no, especially when you have political opponents reading into this whole thing politics and talking about possible perceived, and I don't believe in that, perceived executive manipulation of the judicial process. Why don't you leave the thing the way it is for it to be determined judicially on basis of the facts and the law, rather than this approach? You see, of course, this is cleaner than the Japan one, where it descended from genocide and all those things to routing. Eventually, they charged him with routing, eventually, except that they couldn't make their case out. So I'm having difficulty with how prosecutions put their case together and send them to the courts. That itself is part of it. We should be looking at the quality of prosecution. Okay, because I agree, the judge will sit there, you bring your case, then it's determined on facts and law, isn't it, in terms of the outcome. So perhaps we should be taking another critical look at quality of prosecution, and then of course police investigation before even prosecution. The intelligence that comes with the investigations that put together that builds a docket for the prosecution. I have a difficulty with that, and they may be happy at home now, but I'm disappointed. I thought they should be serving some time in prison.
Okay.
After all, it's human beings who are there.
Interesting. Well. Elijah Yusuf saying we have had situations where every day, and you are a practitioner, you've been a practitioner, so people go under these kind of charges, rioting, and they get lesser sentences. Why are we crying?
Oh, thank you so very much. And thank you. I was listening to you on my radio, and you were a lawyer to the booth. You engage in a lot of the technicalities of the law, try and put Bentel in the corner, try to explain himself out. But I agree entirely with my brother Abimalik Kokobako. It was a fine opportunity.
This is what a lawyer and law teacher sends me. He says the criminal justice enterprise is a purely political process. The decision to prosecute, the offense to be charged with, and the trial process is political.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is why we have a problem with the OSP. Because the state determines which cases it wants to prosecute.
And even how.
And how. That's the problem. So he's perfectly right. And so we're trying to balance create a balancing act between Article 88.3 and 88.4 and the
Perhaps he may
neutrality
be
and
right.
independence.
Perhaps he may be right on the first 2 points, but not the last, the trial itself. The trial is not political, except where the Attorney General comes and says, "I withdrawn," or nolli
But
prosequi.
you have just provided the answer. The power of nolli prosequi also determines the trial. But exactly, a culture of deterrence to stop the culture of impunity. Perfectly, I agree totally with Abdul Makoko Kuba.
Well, he will be attacked very soon, and I can assure you why. Because he has been pleading for people who have been cited for contempt, which was seen as a very grievous offense, and all of that. And here he is saying he preferred custodial for these people.
Well, yes, I think so. I think so. This,
I have a problem.
But this-
with philosophical problem.
Lawyers have a problem with it.
what I'm saying is that this is a matter where we have to look at the facts and be honest with it. Repeating mistakes, Obi Menu of late once said, has never been experienced.
Okay.
Now, we have had a history of vigilantism in the Fourth Republic. Never mind which party came into power.
Okay.
People took their law into their own hands and misbehaved. In this particular case, there was a security couple who was stationed in Eastern region before the MPP won power. He was transferred from Eastern region to Ashanti region. He did not transfer himself. He obeyed lawful orders. Lawful instructions. This person was assaulted and brutalized. In fact, it's assault and battery.
Then that takes it beyond misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor. It's assault and battery. And then they not only beat him up, they also dragged him down the floor. Two, they destroyed public property.
The video we saw,
Yes.
and they may play it back, you didn't see anybody beat him up.
But
You
it's
saw
blood.
him being dragged,
Yes.
and you saw him falling over the stairs,
Yeah.
and there was blood, of
There
course.
was blood.
Right.
So you can see battery clearly made up, and like he was saying.
Told.
There was some claim that the blood was not from him.
Yeah,
Well-
somebody, one of
well,
the
that's the-
perpetrators.
That's
the
why
claim.
we should investigate.
That's why.
And you
that's
see,
the
that's
claim.
where you needed him to submit himself to police process, to go for medical examination, and for him to be part of the
But
prosecution.
was
as
he
well.
invited by the police? And did he decline the invitation?
We do not know as of
Yeah,
now,
this-
but
it's not good.
The,
It's not clear.
the presumptive, very legitimate presumptive conclusion is that if he was associated with the NPP and Delta Force is NPP, you can't have him go and give his people,
But
you know,
the law is no respecter of persons, violating the rights of a person, assaulting a person, beating him up, and destroying public property. Knows no MPP or NDC.
Then again, nobody can compel him to give evidence before
That
the
is
court.
why I'm saying that. You see, and this brings me exactly into Bright Odro's case.
Don't jump the gun.
Don't go there.
You understand? You don't. You see. You must be professional. A police officer, a public servant must be professional in his approach to duty.
when you are under threat,
Yeah, I
and you
just heard him
suspect that
say-
if you go and give any testimony, you worsen your situation, you
What
will
was
do
it?
that.
That is a further threat. I mean, somebody didn't give testimony. But
You may be killed before you take a process
Yes,
against those who are
The
threatening you.
state has a duty to protect us. So if the state fails in protecting such a person, then probably will be descending into anarchy. He just said it. Trump gave executive orders. A small judge sitting somewhere said, stop the orders. He said it was unconstitutional. That is the kind of boldness. We were lauding on this platform the decision to annul the elections in Kenya. All of us spoke to it and said probably that was a new beginning in Africa.
In my take, I had a different view that a recount would have been more inexpensive and prudent approach.
Well,
by
yeah,
the-
maybe
by
we're
the
looking at the
Supreme Court
cost
of Kenya.
We're looking at the cost. You are looking at the cost.
Beyond the
but we're
cost.
looking at timid judges. Okay, now finding the metal to pronounce on matters they feel strongly about.
You're right.
Okay, so clearly, for us, this matter, the Delta Forces matter, is so serious as to be engaged in barroom views. No, so serious.
You have,
no, because
you may have seen the video. What do you say? Don't you agree with the Attorney General that you cannot identify any of the 13 physically beating him up or, as it were, assaulting him? And that you would have to rely on circumstantial evidence. And you know the rule. Circumstantial evidence must lead to one and only one conclusion.
Must point irresistibly, and the Republic must point irresistibly to the conclusion that such a person or these persons did the act. Not so. And we were aided. The circumstantial evidence will have been aided by the video that you have.
Okay.
It will have been aided. And we are saying that, you see, when the Delta Forces stormed the courts and freed their colleagues, I filed a question in Parliament. The question was never admitted. I had 3 supplementary questions to that question.
One, with all due respect,
in refusing,
to what extent can we verify your question that you filed and
well,
as to whether it was admitted or not? Because that's between
Samson,
you and the Speaker's office.
Samson is an investigative journalist as well.
Please. Bring these things out there.
In refusing, failing or neglecting to prosecute these members of the Delta Forces who invaded the court in Kumasi, are we not constituting them into outlaws and emboldening other vigilante groups who might want to take the cause or route of the Delta Forces? And that's what Mr. Abdul Makoko Kubako is saying. And so the culture of deterrence, we should not embolden them. It appears to me that slapping that paltry amount of 1,800 fine on them, which fine we are not even sure whether they were the people who paid, is emboldening other groups. We are not seeing the end yet. It is unlike Muntie, even though Muntie had its own seriousness and gravity of an offense. But what happened is unlike.
There were fines and custodial sentences
as well.
Together.
This was an attack, direct assault on the court.
No. Draw that extension.
Yeah. First of all,
Delta 8.
First of all, it was an attack on an officer who was vicariously held responsible for an act he had no control over. He didn't transfer himself to Kumasi. He was transferred and given responsibility. He was vicariously held responsible for that. And he was beaten. That alone had the tendency, or could have the tendency of putting fear in other public officers in accepting posters. Yes.
An attack on the state institution.
Yes, an attack on state institution.
Public officers.
Yes, officers.
Okay.
So, and now, those people, again, were arrested. I mean, and to say that you didn't identify those who did that is to, again, try to take us for granted.
Again, there was a video.
There was a video.
And the video, yes, you see a crowd shouting and saying all sorts of things, including direct insults at the judge. But you couldn't pinpoint that these were the people who entered the court and took and created the access for the people to move out.
But
that's the point I'm
building like it's one and the same case. We just trying to separate.
No.
No, it's not.
How is
They
it one?
are the same group, but the
different
issues
offenses and
are
circumstances.
different. They are the same
They're
group.
the same people.
There's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yes.
So I was pointing to you why
one and the same
I was
charge.
pointing to you
Yes,
why
the courts too, and
why
not
the
the
Delta
one and the
8
same offense.
the Delta 8's case failed.
Because
The inability to identify them.
Yes. So again on technical grounds, because
Why is it not part of the law?
the inability to identify them, the people did not go. I would just establish it here that they were one and the same group.
So they are
It
the
was
same
not a different group that went and freed the Delta 8. not the same group of Delta 13.
That is true.
Yeah. So how could you fail to identify them?
No, you see,
No, but in trying in prosecuting...
Well, so when technical...
Delta 13.
So technically...
He's saying that it's Delta.
Delta. So technically, we couldn't say that we couldn't identify them. But well, we agree, we couldn't identify them. But again, that lends credence to what we are saying, that it ought to have ended this way, and in fact, and indeed it ended that way. That there was serious reluctance to prosecute these people. That we dropped the charges, saying that we could make the charges malleable. That we had it difficult to punish our own. That we accept, and the president said it categorically, that he was not going to shield them. We accept that what they did was totally unacceptable.
What do you say about the claims that even the police investigating would also be entertain some fears in seeking to say that we can identify them? And if they did so,
they might lose their job.
Not lose their job per se, but opening themselves up to, being disturbed by the same Delta force.
Not Delta forces. Delta forces had no capacity. Delta forces' capacity is founded on the perceived protection they receive from the state. The state is too big. It's a colossus. It is the only institution in Ghana that has the monopoly over the use of force. It's the state. Delta forces will pale into insignificance if the state proceeds against them. I mean, unless we are going to say that people can establish private armies in Ghana, they can't. No group, I'm telling you, and I stress, no group can exist legitimately in Ghana and use force that is not warranted by law.
So as far as you are concerned, and critics like you, sufficient justice would have been what Kweku also prescribes, custodial sentence.
That's what I said. We look at the evidence and be honest about it. That everybody, me, I'm not a sympathizer of the MPP. I don't belong to them. The man who was transferred from Eastern region to Ashanti region, if even he was a sympathizer of the MPP, that's his case. But I sympathize with him because he was beaten for absolutely no fault of his. Because he was transferred, he had obeyed lawful orders, and he was beaten up. And I thought that alone was sufficient to get the court to impose a sentence that could deter other people from committing that offense. And I think that the ingredients of the offense, if we were minded to prosecute them, were sufficient to impose a custodial sentence.
I see. Interesting. Let me attempt to see if I can read portions of the advice that led to what happened. And this advice is dated the 14th of September. And it is the Republic versus Kojo Fosu, alias Kojo Bamba, Awal Sadat Abubakar, Jamel Issa, Abubakar Sadiq, Abdul Hamid, Hamza Mohammed, Salu Ishaku, Akwesi Owusu, Kwabena Owusu, Kojo Chei, Eja Boedu, Yusuf Salu, Kweku Awoche, and Salu Yusuf. These are the 13. And the advice says that I refer to our first letter, blah, 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 dated 31st May 2017, and a subsequent letter of response from your outfits, reference so and so, dated 8th August 2017. In our above mentioned letter, we directed further investigations to be conducted into the case of assault and causing damage by securing videos or pictures of the incident. And I think what you are watching now is when the man who had been posted to the security outfit was manhandled, and the blood that was denied to belong to him, that's what you see on the stairs. Okay. So those of you who have the benefit of television, enjoy. Now, so they are attorneys, advice was that there should be further investigations into the case of assault and causing damage by securing videos or photos of the incident. It was also directed that witnesses in the case should be afforded the opportunity to see if they could identify the perpetrators who entered the offices to assault and cause damage. Per your above letter dated 8th of August 2017, you stated the outcome of your investigations to be as follows: that you had obtained pictures from social media and edited, which revealed that a named Biggie, quote unquote, now at large, was very instrumental in the attack and efforts were being made to trace him. Okay, then Koku's point about still follow up on the others. 2, that letters had so far been written to some media houses which showed the scene severally on their networks for copies of the files and assistance, but no response had been received. One of those letters, did they come to multimedia? Because you also had the videos, and you didn't assist in making the videos available. That's according to the Attorney General. Let the journalists tell us if this happened. 3, that letters had been written to the Kumasi office of the National Security, Office, where the incident occurred, for CCTV footage of the day in question, but no response had been received. Okay, serious. Interesting. So you see the difficulties they encountered. 4, that on Tuesday, the regional CID the regional CID Ashanti scheduled an identification parade to be conducted at the regional police headquarters, prior to which the complainant and his witnesses, Roger Kwashi and Florence Menu, had been served with notices of participation, but on the said day, complainant and his witnesses failed to attend. 5, that even when complainant was contacted on phone that same day to remind him, he told the police he was not interested in the case and would not come to the police station to assist in any further investigations.
Amazing.
So you see the problems the Attorney General faced.
Interesting.
From your letter, it appears that the complainant and the witnesses are not willing to cooperate, even though the little evidence on record shows that offenses of assault, stealing, and unlawful damage had been committed. The difficulty prosecution would, however, encounter would be identifying the perpetrators of these acts. Nevertheless, it appears that the suspects admitted to having been at the venue at the particular time the incident happened. Suspect Kojo Fosu, that's the suspect number 1, the first accused, Kojo Bamba, mentioned in his investigations cautioned statement dated the 25th of March 2017 that on Friday the 24th of March 2017 they converged at the Kofrom party office and proceeded to the Regional Coordinating Council on board 5 Sprinter buses to demonstrate against the complainant's appointment. Then, this is what the officers do. They quote Section 198, which we have referred to earlier, which says that a person who takes part in a riot commits a misdemeanor. Then they quote Section 196 of the same act, which provides the definition for a riot, that 5 or more persons together in a public or private place commit the criminal offense of a riot where they commence or attempt to execute a common purpose with violence and without lawful authority to use such violence for that purpose. And then they quote Section 197. Further provides the definition of violence to include a conduct that is likely to cause in a person a reasonable fear of or a fear of a criminal force, harm or mischief to that person, of the property of that person. Then they say that the statement of Florence Menu clearly showed she was pushed to leave the office as they rained insults on her and the complainant amid shouts that they were coming to drag complainant away from the office of the Regional Coordinating Council. This statement is clearly not a mere coincidence with that of the first suspect, with that of what the first suspect told the police, namely that they had gone to the premises of the Regional Coordinating Council to demonstrate against the appointment of the complainants. In conclusion, they say clearly, for what other purpose would 5 sprinter buses of 150 men gone to the premises of the Regional Coordinating Council to do, if not to cause riot or as evidenced by their own statements? The suspects in this case have admitted being on the premises that fateful day, and also the fact that they are members of the Delta Force. The statement of the witness clearly showed that the suspect's conduct caused some reasonable fear of assault or possible harm to them. You are directed to withdraw the initial charges proffered against them at the circuit court and charge them with rioting and arraign them before a district court for prosecution. Your police regional CID duplicate docket number so and so is returned for the above stated reasons. And this is signed by Jemfua Sapong, who is a principal state attorney for the chief state attorney. So on the basis of what I have read, and I needed to read all of it for our benefit because we all have not known that this is what had gone on. Just a brief comment, Yusuf Seni, brief comments.
Well, I just think that basically this matter, we will accept it as it is.
Okay.
It showed a lack of willingness of states.
You forever hold your peace.
Yes, okay. Yes, because there's nothing we can do about it.
Yes, and what do you say?
Well, clearly.
That they wrote letters to media.
Some thorough investigation.
And they didn't even assist.
And demonstrable effort was made to, as it were, set a clear example. And like I've said, I mean, without being political, it's important that we move forward as a country. Yeah. We can't continue to condone activities of these persons. So, useful start, but I hope that this does not happen again. If it does, of course, further steps should be taken to ensure that those who are involved are actually pinned down and appropriate punishment meted out.
Yes, so,
like Kweku said, we've had too many of these cases. My worry is this going to be...
The man had indicated readiness to come for the identification parade together with the Florence, the officer in his office.
I am coming to that.
And they all declined.
Is this going to be deterrent enough? Now, there is nothing you can do to force somebody who does not want to do their work to do it. Yeah. One man working with his heart will do more than 100 of these people working with their hands.
But what you also said, in the absence of these witnesses, there was the ocular evidence to be used.
But that's where I'm going without taking too much time, which is why I'm saying that there are so many ways you can look at this matter and say, you could have done better. And that's what I'm saying. One man working with his hands will do far less.
And maybe looking at avenues of subpoenaing those who were not willing.
The footage we saw...
And turn them into hostile witnesses.
The footage we saw just came from one journalist camera. I suppose there were more than one camera there.
Right.
Did they have CCTV or not? And look, sometimes
the people council itself refused to send any CCTV.
Exactly. The people even faced it. You could have picked up a few of them and then caused them. My brother, this one, they just wanted to do something to represent something.
So we accept that.
So yes.
I'm just wondering, is the gentleman, the victim of the assault, is he still at post?
I suppose so.
Well, we don't know.
If I had my way, I would ask that he should be removed.
Why?
You can't take care of your own security. You want to take care of the rest of the country.
You see, he's in charge of regional security.
Yeah.
Is that what? Is that not the
yes.
situation? I see. And he wasn't ready to cooperate with the
State.
state in order to ensure
He was
that
not
we
interested. That's what
He
this is.
wasn't I know he's entitled to seek that option.
Absolutely.
After all, Nanka Bruce also wrote to the IGP that he was no longer interested in pursuing the case, the Flagstaff House assault. And people still thought that no, some investigations could still be conducted based on the footage.
Right.
But this gentleman is at post. He's at post.
I suspect so.
Doing security.
I don't
Because we
think
have
he
not been told otherwise.
I don't think he deserves to be retained where he is. That's my view. Then two, are we being told that the CCTV and the security outfit there was also not made available?
Yes. They said
By
he
the-
wrote letters. Even the media didn't
You mean
help them.
regional security,
Did they ask?
of which this man is the head? He fails to cooperate. He's entitled to that, yes. And then the CCTV too is unavailable. Is that what we are being told? Anyway, my last point. Those 8 people, those who are at large, the Biggie, I can see the name here, Biggie.
Okay, Biggie is
and
there.
someone, Kwame Mafo, alias Killer.
Okay.
He's a killer. See, the police must pursue them. Or is this the end of the case? You are lawyers.
Well, it does look like it's over.
So these 8 are free because the case has
No, I
ended
think
in
the
court?
question was, no, they are not free.
Thank you.
Okay? There is no bar on pursuing them.
Yes.
in law. The
Thank
question
you.
is whether they will be pursued by the authorities.
That is a very,
but the fact is,
that's a very important case.
I want
In
them
law.
to be
it's not
There's no
ready
bar.
There's
In
no
law.
bar against going after them.
In law. There's no
Absolutely.
bar.
But you will need even these ones to help you to track those.
Well, you see,
And you are done with them.
Kweku, sorry to
police-
take
So
your
they
time.
have no
please,
obligation
go
to assist you.
Elsewhere, you know why they do traffic stops? Because
Yes.
they believe that in stopping those things, it's the criminals who are wanted who run away.
Wait.
So they stop you, just ask for a license, they check on you, if there's something, they'll catch you. These guys have, as we speak, committed crimes. So they must be on a wanted list
They're
of cops.
fugitives.
Okay.
There is no legal bar to going after them.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's the point Kweku is making, that we shouldn't stop it.
Well, there have been accused persons who have been at large always in our courts. I don't know why you say to that. Okay, we'll take a break here. This was supposed to be brief, but rather taking
No,
a bit
it's
of
such a
time.
serious issue.
Yeah, it's taking almost an hour. We'll be right back after this break to go back to the police, and this time to the CID, who are supposed to be doing some of these investigations, and now who is the head and the questions being raised about Mame Tiwa. We'll be right back.